Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got another Transformers review coming your way. This time around, we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers the Movie Studio Series 8610 Decepticon Sweep. So this is one of the minions that works for Scourge. And as we always do, let's go ahead and take a look at that packaging first. And we'll bring it in, take a nice look at that artwork right there. And there is the Decepticon Sweep looking all angry. And you got Studio Series 8610, Decepticon Sweep, Transformers the Movie, Transformers up the side. And over here you've got a little bit more of that artwork. And on the back you have your product shots. It is big screen inspired. He is one of the Heralds of Unicron. 19 steps. Unicron reformats fallen Decepticons into the sweeps. Deadly hunters created to track down the matrix of leadership. You do get a backdrop. This is a Studio Series. And down here you see the reformatted sad baby. Always good to see him. And over here, 8610, you got a close-up of that face. He is a Voyager-class. Up top, Transformers the Movie. Down low, manufacturing information. And that is it for the outside of the packaging. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what came inside that box. And here's everything that came inside that box. So we'll start, as we always do, with your little sheet of warnings. And then, of course, you get your instruction sheet. And then he comes with two accessories. So the first one is his rifle. And we'll take a look at that real quick. So this is the exact same rifle for the Scourge figure. And for all intents and purposes, this is the exact same figure anyway. There is one minor difference that we'll go over. But for the most part, these guys are exactly the same. And their weapons are exactly the same. So other than the fact that this one is a little bit more of a blue and the other one is a little bit more of a purple, same weapons. And you get your weapon effect. Now these two are the exact same weapon effects. You get the same thing with Scourge. So kind of a cool, looks kind of an organic effect, I guess, is kind of what makes me think it doesn't look precise like a laser. This looks like, I think I used some sounds if you go back and watch my Scourge review that I'm not going to repeat here, but it's just kind of an organic look to it as far as that effect. So that's everything that came inside that box, except for, of course, the sweep figure himself and the backdrop. So as I say in all these studio figure reviews, I really like these backdrops. The display stand, I like that they do them. However, I don't have enough room, so this is going to go back in the box. The box is going to go into storage. But if you look back there, you do see a couple of the reformatted characters. So in this circumstance, it looks like you've got Kickback over there and you've got Shrapnel over there. So a couple of Insecticons being reformatted into, of course, Cyclonus, Scourge, and the sweeps. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way, and then we'll take a look at the details here for the sweep. And here is Mr. Sweep himself. So let's go ahead and bring him in and get a nice close-up of those details. And we'll start with that head sculpt. So he does have that big old goatee, or maybe like a Fu Manchu right there. And he's got his decorative head dressing there that seems incredibly dangerous, and you don't want to look directly at it because he might shoot it at you. And coming down here to the chest, good details. I love the abs on this figure and on the Scourge figure. I think they look really cool. Coming down, looking at those legs. So not a lot of paint going on this guy, or individualized paint, I should say. He's all just these shades of blue and gray. But it makes sense, right? It works because he's a minion. You're not going to draw attention to yourself if you're not the main man. So do have some detail in those feet. And on the insides of those legs, you've got a little bit going on. Not a lot, but enough to keep it from looking monolithic. All right, and then over here on the sides, you do have these nice red dotted or violet dotted areas. And a little bit of detail right up here, which is nice. Let's lift this arm out of the way so you can see really no hollow areas on this figure. I do appreciate that. And here, you know, other than the big old Scourge backpack, he comes together pretty good, or the big old sweep backpack. I may call him Scourge a few times in this video because this is Scourge. I mean, it's the same mold with only a few minor differences. So, but looking up under the arms, No hollow areas to speak of there. Filled in nicely here for the shoulders, always appreciated. And coming over here to the outside of the arms, you do have a port right there for some effects or the weapons. And up here, these are ports as well, but they are painted with violet inside. And even back here for these wings, you've got good detail in there, so they're nice to look at. And then on the back, he's just got a lot of backpack going on, so there's pretty much the entire hull and outer skin of his ship mode back here, but it works. It's okay. I'm not that upset about it. And back here, I think I may have noted this in the original Scourge video as well, but these are filled in. I really do appreciate that they take the extra effort to put some material in there so you don't have just hollow areas hanging out. So yeah, I mean, this guy, for all intents and purposes, this guy is Scourge. The other figure, Studio Series Scourge, you know, he's going to look just like him. He's going to have the same articulation, all that good stuff. So if you're familiar with that figure, no surprises here, right? Now, as far as articulation goes, you may not count it, but I kind of do, because I think it's fun if he wants to have like kind of a sideways baseball cap kind of look, you know, like maybe he's a rapper from the mid-90s, something like that. You can do that. But then you do have that head on a ball joint, so you get some side to side and some up and down, and then you can take that head around all the way if you choose to do so. Just watch out for that Fu Manchu right there. And over here for the shoulders, you can come straight out about that far, or straight up about that far, and then you can take them all the way around, just being mindful of your wing back there. And you do have just over 90 for your elbow bend. You have bicep rotation right up here. And then down here at the wrists, you have wrist rotation. So always nice to have that. You do have waist rotation on this figure, so you can turn him around at the waist. And then down here at the hips, you're going to get a split of about that much. So you're not going to be able to go full Van Damme with this guy, but this is more than enough. So no issues there whatsoever. Kicking forward, you're going to kick forward about that far. And kicking backward, again, being mindful of the wing and all the backpack, you can kick back about that far. And knee bend, you're going to get over 90 on those knees. And you do have a little bit of thigh rotation. So it's not a lot. And something that I've discovered here is, if you try to go too extreme with this, I appreciate that they've designed it this way so nothing bad happens. But you're only going to get a few degrees of freedom. But if you try to go a little bit further, you're actually going to start taking this leg off. And I'll demonstrate it here. So the leg will come off. Don't panic. It's okay. You just set it right back in those grooves. So just line it back up and then push it back in. But you really don't get that many degrees of thigh rotation here. Just something to be aware of. You get a little bit for posing, but it's not going to be enough if you like really want to get him in a super dynamic pose. So I would have liked to have seen them do something a little bit different here, but it is what it is. All right, so down here at the feet, you do get a little bit of ankle tilt. You don't do that. Don't take his toe off. You get a little bit of ankle tilt. And again, it's enough, you know, with this thigh split that you can get a pretty decent pose out of him. And then as far as the toes go, don't take them off. But you can, of course, for transformation, you can fold them all the way in as far as you need to go. But you can also use these for posing if you want to do that. So you can come out that far on both of those. So for the most part, he is a pretty articulated figure. He has a good low center of gravity, and he has a decent level of stability with him. So you shouldn't have much trouble getting him in a lot of dynamic poses unless you are wanting to use that thigh rotation. So that thigh rotation is going to hurt you a little bit in some of those dynamic poses. All right, so we're not going to do transformation in this video. If you want to see how to transform this guy, I will have a link in the description back to my Studio Series Scourge figure, because it is the exact same transformation. There's no difference whatsoever. And just for the sake of trying to save a little bit of time, we're going to skip the transformation here. But what we'll do is, through the magic of video editing, we will have this guy in his alt mode, and we'll take a look at him there. And here we have the little sweepy head in his alt mode. And he is, like I said earlier, just like Scourge, but it's still a really cool looking alt mode. So let's go ahead and take a moment and look at those details on there. And I do already have his accessories on with the effect. Now you can plug this effect in, of course, on the end of the weapon, but you can also plug them in here on these nacelles on either side, or if you want, you could plug them in back here if you want to give them some rockets. And he is effects compatible from the War for Cybertron line, so you can always do something like that as well if you choose to do so. All right, so let's go ahead and take this weapon off so we can see him without that, and we'll just put this off to the side, and we'll start right up here and look at that hull, and you've got that Decepticon old school sticker on there, and this is split in half, so he has half of that symbol on the back of his wings in robot mode. And then you've got all this texture detail in here, and you've got a little spot there where he's hiding his face, and you can take a look in there and you can give him the old peekaboo if you want to. And coming over here to the side, again, not a lot of detail, but what little bits they put in there looks really good. I like these details right here. The nacelles look good. Again, keeping in mind that this is a mainline Voyager-class figure. I had a little bit of a gap right there. I had to squeeze that back together. And even on the back here, it looks good. So yeah, I mean, this really, as far as alt modes go, it comes together pretty good. It falls apart a little bit on the bottom. You know, you can pretty much just tell he's standing there and he's got himself shrouded like Dracula. But I don't know. I like it. There you go. All right. So yeah, top, bottom, all of it looks good. I keep knocking his nacelles over. So what we'll do now is we will go ahead and we'll bring in some alt mode comparisons so you can see how he looks compared to a few different figures out there. So for that first alt mode comparison, we're just going to jump right in it and get the most relevant comparison out of the way. So on the left over here, you have the Studio Series 86 Sweep. Over here, you have the Studio Series 86 Scourge. And in this mode, no difference whatsoever other than the colors. So you can see for yourself, you're a little blue here, you're a little more purple over there. Everything else in alt mode is exactly the same thing. Not to say that they don't look good, but they are literally the exact same alt mode. I guess one thing that I would have liked to have seen was to signify that he's a Minion. Instead of being a Voyager, maybe they could have gone deluxe class with this guy and just shrunk him down a little bit. Kept the same transformation, but just shrank it down, so that way Scourge would be the larger figure of the two. Maybe something along those lines, but as it stands right now, these are the exact same thing. So what we'll do is we'll take a couple different views here and just kind of soak it in and see, you know, from all different angles, just how much these two match up. So here we see them in that ISO view. Here we see them both heading the same direction. Here they are in that reverse ISO view as though they're moving away from you. Here they are back to back. Here they are nose to nose. And here they are both sporting their weapons. And for our next comparison, here we see the Studio Series 86 Sweep next to arguably the best Voyager-class mainline figure we've ever gotten. This is the Voyager-class Kingdom Cyclonus. For our next comparison, here we see a couple of Minions hanging out. So, of course, you have the Studio Series 86 Sweep on the left, next to the Studio Series 86 Sharkticon. And for our final alt mode comparison, much to my shame, I do not have a G1 Scourge in my collection, so the closest I'm going to be able to get to that is what we see here. This is the Generations Scourge. Alright, so that wraps up the alt mode comparisons. Let's get this guy back into his bot mode and do some comparisons there. Alright everybody, so for our first robot mode comparison, we're going to start with the most relevant comparison that we can have, and of course that is with the Studio Series Scourge. So over here, we have the Studio Series Sweep. Over here, we have the Studio Series Scourge. And I do want to make sure that I point out, believe it or not, these two in bot mode are not exactly the same thing. It's kind of subtle. I'm not sure why Hasbro did this, but I guess it's enough to differentiate between the two of them. Can anybody spot the difference other than the color? Give up? Check this out. Look at their hands. They're mirror opposites of each other. So you have on the Sweep, you have right hand open. On Scourge, you have right hand fist. Left hand fist, left hand open. It's kind of odd, kind of cool. I guess it helps you differentiate. So, you know, I'm taking that from the perspective, as far as I'm concerned, that Scourge is right-handed. These guys are left-handed. You know, so I'm going to be displaying the Studio Series Sweep weapon in his left hand, and I'll be displaying Scourge's weapon in his right hand, and I guess that's going to help me differentiate between the two of them. So, yeah, I mean, there you go. Everything else, to the best of my knowledge, as far as I can tell, everything else is exactly the same except for those hands. So kind of a weird thing, but I guess I appreciate that they did it. So just something worth noting. We'll turn these guys around real quick just so you can see. I mean, you're looking at the same mold. There's no doubt about it. Just the hands are mirror opposites. So there you go. All right. So won't waste any more time doing any deep dive comparisons here. If you do want to see more about Scourge, I'll have a link to my review for Scourge in the description, and that's also where you'll see the transformation for the Sweep, because it is the exact same transformation. So be sure to check that out if you need to. And let's go ahead and move on to the next robot mode comparison. And for our next robot mode comparison, here we see the Studio Series Voyager Sweep next to the Kingdom Voyager Cyclonus. And again, just like I said in the alt mode, this is arguably one of the best Voyager class figures mainline that we have ever gotten. So, I mean, even from a size standpoint, I mean, you can see this makes sense, I guess. You know, you want Cyclonus to be a little bit bigger than your Sweep or your Scourge, but gosh, this guy's awesome. Can't say enough good things about that figure. Next up is our Minion comparison. So we have the Sweep on the left, and we have the Sharkticon Gnaw from Studio Series 86 on the right. So just a couple of minions hanging out, waiting for somebody to give them some orders, I suppose. Next spot mode comparison is the Studio Series 86 Sweep next to the Generations Scourge. And just for fun, I figured we would do a little family photo here of the whole Heralds of Unicron Decepticon gang from Transformers the movie. So left to right, you have Galvatron, you have a Sweep, you have Scourge, and you have Cyclonus. And these guys look good together, no doubt about it. I do want to just do a quick editorial here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I totally get that a figure like the Sweep is a minion. And I know a lot of collectors out there like to do what they call army building, where they buy more than one of the same figure to build that army. If I could just take a moment to say I totally get it, and if they're on the shelf and you're the first one there and you have the money, you have every right to buy them, but it would sure be nice if you left a few for others. This is the only one I have. It's the only one I'm going to buy. I don't need to add others to my collection. But, you know, if you're an army builder collector, leave a few out there for the rest of us. It would be greatly appreciated. All right, Mr. Sweepy says that is the end of the bot mode comparisons, so let's go ahead and talk about those final thoughts. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Transformers the Movie Studio Series 86 number 10 Decepticon Sweep. Putting it as bluntly as I can, if you are not an army builder or a minion collector and you already have Scourge, you can skip this guy. I mean, this is a copy and paste job from the Studio Series Scourge. Not to say that this is a bad figure, but this is 100% just a copy and paste job. So if you don't feel the need to build your Decepticon minion army, then this guy can probably just sit on the shelf. So that being said, it is not at all a bad figure. Not one bit. The Studio Series Scourge figure that this is based on, that this essentially copied, is a great figure. So let's go ahead and quantify it a little bit. So if you don't have a Scourge and or you are an army builder, then let's go ahead and quantify this guy a little bit and talk about those bullets. And we will start with the aesthetics, the overall looks of this guy. And no doubt, robot mode or alt mode, on the shelf, this mold looks great. This figure, whether it be the Sweep or Scourge, looks good in both modes. Definitely captures that movie aesthetic. So he's going to have a great shelf presence for you. I think that, if I were going to be a little nitpicky, he could have benefited from some paint apps to help some of those mechanical details pop a little bit, maybe a little bit of silver here and there. I think that would have helped overall on the figure. And that gun could have used some paint apps as well. It's just kind of, it's plain, it's bland, and molded all in blue. I don't know. It just it doesn't do it for me. So overall for aesthetics, I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10. Moving on to articulation, I think for the most part that this figure will do everything that you need it to do. You can get it in some pretty good dynamic poses. I will say that you will be hindered, you will be limited by the thigh rotation on this figure. So you'll have to work around that. It's not impossible, but it does make things a little bit more difficult than if they would have allowed a few more degrees of rotation in that thigh. So other than that, everything else works pretty well. Just keep in mind, you got to make sure that, if you're going to do anything with those arms, make sure you've got those wings out of the way. But you can pretty much put this guy in any pose that you want to. So for the most part, I think his articulation is pretty good, and I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10 overall on articulation. Now, moving on to the accessories. This is where I'm going to ding him. So, just like I mentioned, this is a copy and paste from the Studio Series Scourge. Just straight up copy and paste. The only difference is they swapped out the closed fist, open hand, left hand, right hand thing for whatever inexplicable reason. I'm glad they did it. That way you can differentiate between the two other than just the color, but everything else is exactly the same. So for those accessories, I thought the gun that Scourge came with was a little weak, and the effect was okay. And seeing them again on the Sweep, I'm just not impressed. I'm let down by the accessories for this figure. Just putting it plainly, I'm let down by them. So I'm not going to score him very highly on the accessories here. Maybe it would have made a difference if it would have been molded in a different color, if it would have had some paint on it, if it would have been a different effect than the one that Scourge came with. Any one of those things would have been nice and brought that score up. But as it stands right now, I'm giving this guy a 6 out of 10 on accessories because I think that this was just lazy. As far as the accessories go, this was a lazy release on Hasbro's part. Overall quality, moving on. I will say that coming out of the box, this figure in front of you, it does everything that I expected it to do. It doesn't have any molding flaws that I can find. The paint apps, what few there are done properly. It came with everything that it was supposed to. The joints, for the most part, are tight. So if I had to get a little bit picky, I would say that over time I think I'm going to have some concern for those hip joints, for the splits. They're just a tick loose, or a tick more loose than I would have liked them to have been coming out of the box. And I think over time that, just through play and transformation and posing, that these hip joints may not hold up very well over time. So for the most part, everything else is great. So I'm going to give this guy a 9 out of 10 on quality. No major problems whatsoever. Just with those hips are a little bit of a wish list item. So bringing us to our last bullet, the overall value. Again, much like the accessories, this is where I'm going to ding him a little bit because this is a copy and paste job from Scourge. So this is where it's going to be really subjective. For me personally, I think that the Voyager price point for this figure is a little steep. I already have Scourge in my collection. I'm not much of a Minion army builder. I really like having the Sweep in the collection, but I did have some hesitation picking this guy up off the shelf. I found him at a local Walmart in North America out in the wild, and I picked him up, and initially I was excited. I'm like, oh yes, new figure, you've got that new figure high. But then as I held him for a moment, I thought, gosh, do I really want this guy? Because he's the exact same thing of something else that I already have. So that's really going to be up to you to make that decision. If you want this guy, if you don't have Scourge, then I'm going to easily recommend him. If you're an army builder, I'm going to easily recommend him. But if you already have Scourge in your in your collection and you couldn't care less about minions, skip this guy. Plain and simple. So for me, from a quantifying standpoint, for the overall value, I'm putting this guy at a 7 out of 10. So that brings us to the grand total. Out of a possible 50 points, the Studio Series Sweep gets a total of 38 points out of 50, which puts him at 76%. So this guy is very much a case of, if you don't have him or Scourge, pick him up. If you do have Scourge, you're going to have to make that call. So I know that sounds a little ambiguous, but it's just the way I feel about minions and copy and paste jobs. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the review. Hopefully this review has been helpful and informative, and I hope that you know, the information that I've provided here helps you make a good informed decision on whether or not you're going to pick this guy up. And if nothing else, I hope you were entertained by this. So if you haven't already done so, please be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. I'm genuinely curious to hear what people think about the sweep and about the copy and paste jobs that we've been getting from Hasbro, well, frankly, since the beginning. So, but with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Until we see you guys in the next review, take care.